Hi there. If you're listening to this, you just walked out of Fantastic Four First Steps. We also just walked out of Fantastic Four First Steps, and we're here to talk to you about it.
That's right. This is Friends from Work, a podcast about all things in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, hosted by myself, Kyle Sconowell, and my longtime friend from work, Robbie Earl. That's right, we just got out of the theater, and let me tell you, Fantastic Four. We loved it.
Man,
we loved it.
Here's what I think is interesting. I say that. I'm going to say that about like 9 things tonight.
Here's thing number 1 that's interesting.
Like there have been so many eras of comic book movies where there was a certain kind of tone that was dominating, and we've talked about how the MCU has done a good job over the years of balancing some of those at the same time. Like Guardians coming out the same year that Winter Soldier comes out. But I think it's hard for me to gauge movies like this and like Superman, even though I think there are a lot of differences there that will be interesting to talk about in a later episode, maybe this month. But I think they are similar in how like happy they are to embrace the comic bookiness of the what they're adapting, like the source material.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's not just costumes and visual stuff, although it is that. I mean, you look at like the Fantastic Four costumes here, you look at the Superman costume in the Gunn film, and they are very much like, they are not trying to make them like chic and cool and edgy. It's like you contrast like this with the 2015 Fantastic Four, you contrast Superman with Man of Steel, and it's like there are no muted colors, everything's really bright. But it's also like they're leaning into these big ideas that are kind of like, I mean,
they're almost galactic.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's just like the idea of the whole MCU and so much of what came out of that and what was modeled after that was this like, let's start small and make something that's kind of relatable that people can get in the door with and then go from there. So it's like Iron Man was like barely a superhero movie.
Oh, sure.
And then like, let's slowly kind of like get you acclimated until we're at Endgame and it actually feels like, oh, surprise, you're now bought into a superhero franchise. Whereas maybe when you went to go see Iron Man, if someone told you that you were going to watch a movie about like a raccoon fighting a giant purple guy,
Guardians 2 or Ragnarok or something.
Yeah. But this is, and like on the one hand, obviously benefits from that. But on the other hand, like this feels like what I think for years Stan Lee was trying to make Marvel movies.
Yeah, it's a comic book movie that's out there and it's loving every bit of it.
Yeah, it's just like, I mean, this is
out there.
It's the wacky, just like, I mean, and again, I'm not going to talk about Superman because you haven't seen it yet and we need to talk about it more that context. But they are both just like, they're not hiding from any of it. It's just like, let's lean into these like big, bold, like kind of like heart on your sleeve, good versus evil, there's
your
like
scene, in other words.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like there's a sincerity to both of these that I really appreciate. Like there's no like, here's an interesting thing about this movie.
Okay,
that's the second one.
Here we go. Thing number 2.
Do you know how rarely they felt the need to undercut a dramatic moment with humor?
It was rare.
It like,
if ever, maybe a line or two or something, but yeah.
But it was in no way like a heavy movie.
No.
You know what I mean?
Look at you. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
It just feels like it was a very unironic film, which is not like, that's not what I would say about a lot of my favorite MCU films, like from the Infinity Saga.
Right. But it's another way that it maybe helped the universe even feel more distinct.
Yeah.
And separate.
Yeah.
Because it didn't take place in the same timeline. And there is also something refreshing. Again, we love the connectivity. of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm not saying that, but there's something refreshing if you're telling a 60s Fantastic Four story by setting it in a separate universe. There's a little bit something refreshing about them being the only superheroes, and being able to lean into that with the whole world loving them, and then the whole world turning on them too. But even like when they're trying to make those portals, the fact that they're the ones on the phone with everyone from the world, and they can get the whole world behind it. I feel like that's harder to do if that isn't, it's set in the same universe as the stuff we know. You started the entire episode this way, and this is so true. It's just not ashamed to be a comic book movie, and I kind of love that that's where we are now. We've talked on this podcast so much about how in the early 2000s, and then, I mean, specifically I'm thinking about the 2015 Fantastic Four movie, that the craze became, let's take a comic book story and let's make it a little more modern. Let's take XMen and put them in black suits. Don't give Wolverine his yellow suit, and don't give him his cowl or whatever, because that's kind of weird. That's cheesy from a comic. So we got to make it look cool and modern and edgy. And I feel like we're kind of coming back around with the phase, and this is what Marvel Studios has been so good at just, embracing this is a comic book movie. And you look at like the difference in Galactus from 2007's Fantastic Four to here. Part of that's probably they didn't have the visual effects back then that they wanted to do this. But also, like, it's just kind of awesome when you do Galactus just like Kirby would have done it. You know, like, it's kind of awesome. That was the entire film, though. Like in every way, like the aesthetics, the time period, the visuals, Silver Surfer, Galactus, the Fantastic Four, their dynamic, their family, it all was just kind of, it felt like it was straight ripped out of the comic I've read.
I mean, and there's something about even the comic that you've read, the Hickman Eaglesham stuff, like what I think, especially the start of that run, what works so well is how much it evokes that era. Like, Eaglesham is kind of doing a Kirby art style, and Hickman writes very differently than Stan Lee, but he's still, like, he writes a read that I think you recognize in this movie. Like, it's a very kind of like, he's logical, but he's not cold. You know, it's like he catches himself thinking too much and thinking too much like a computer, but he is still like, he's a human being. He's not like Vision. You know, like, he's not this, like, so impossibly smart person that you can't talk to him, or he doesn't understand human emotion. And
I thought there was a couple of great scenes with that.
Oh, man.
Like, when he was like, you know, they have a point, they have a plan, you know, or cold and mathematical, or, you know, but it is a plan. And then that whole disagreement, that was perfect. It's like two... I'm thinking about the 2005 one now, but it's like too cold and mathematical, but still a human. Not Vision.
Well, and the other thing about it that we'll talk about this from an MCU perspective, and what this means moving forward, and what Doomsday will mean for all this. But I think something that I love so much here is just the constant contrast between the, like, Galactus, but in 1960s New York. Like, and that's the thing about the, like, Lee Kirby stuff that still feels so, like, it's that contrast. Like, Kirby was so great at visualizing just this, like, weird stuff. Like, the stuff that is, like, Galactus is such a strange character design, but then you put it down into, like, 60s Manhattan, and Kirby was, like, a, lifelong New Yorker, and he was kind of bringing that to his home. And there's something about the strangeness that's lost when you move further and further into, like, modern times, because you just don't have quite as much the level of juxtaposition.
Right, and more hyper-realistic.
Yeah, but, like, doing that, it's like, I love that there's not, like, chrome everywhere the way that there was, like, in the old Fantastic Four movies. Like, it's not like they're trying to make everything look like I mean, kind of like the original X-Men movies did. Everything just looks very, like in the sub-basement, at least, like, modern in a very 2000s understanding of what modern is, which then makes some of these things feel less, like, fantastic, no pun intended. But I think here it's almost like the lessons that they learned, especially in the MCU, and probably with some stuff that, like, the Raimi films did, of just, like, how you can accomplish certain things practically, and then with visual, effects progressing the way that they did, it's now like we reached a point where you can get the best of those worlds. And I mean, that's what I felt like I was like. I felt like I was watching a movie that was practical effect driven, with the understanding that obviously there were an insane amount of visual effects, but it never felt like, oh, here's the visual, like here's the VFX portion, you know?
Okay, I want to say something here. This podcast, if you're listening to this podcast, you know how obsessed we both are, especially me, with like the visual aspects of Infinity War. Infinity War and Endgame, the two best movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We've talked about it for a long time. So hear me out. That's my disclaimer first. I recently was rewatching like the portal sequence from Endgame. And again, I don't mean this blasphemy at all. I mean this is a positive for this. Like, if you go back and watch it now, these movies look better.
Yeah.
Like Thunderbolts, Fantastic Four, they look better. They are the best looking movies the Marvel Cinematic Universe has ever made. And they should. And that's so it's not a bad thing, because Endgame is still like one of the greatest moments in cinematic history. But I mean that from an encouraging standpoint. That it is still getting better.
Yeah.
And this, to me, and Thunderbolts, to be honest, because for totally different reasons, they're pulling off different things, felt like another step up, to where like in 10 years, if you watch this next to those, you'd be like, oh, this one looks better than those did. And so it's still improving, which is even cooler to me.
Yeah. And that is encouraging, because that's how it should, like, we're not going to get into all of this, but I think so much of this of the issues that Marvel's VFX department has had has just stemmed from pressure to produce such an insane quantity of things that they haven't had the opportunity to just like continue honing the craft in the way that we see here.
Last thing on the visual front, I do think, to your point about it not feeling like visual effects, I think that is a mix of the practical, but I also do think there needs to be a little bit of a shout out to like the cinematography feel that they're going with, just because like, and again, I love Infinity War and Endgame. Oh my gosh, I love it so much. But a lot of it can kind of be like, here are these heroes on this level ground, and I'm just going to film them fighting or like moving around or talking. But it's very much kind of feels like they're on this stage, and like this is the background of the stage, and it's pretty. And I'm not, again, this, like, do you get a shot, like that shot of them going to Galactus's ship, and then the Silver Surfer saying, "Behold Galactus," and you don't see anything, then just his eyes light up, and then you see the difference in scale of the Fantastic Four at the very bottom of the screen, and then his eyes. That's not just effects. That's also like the cinematography of how they went to approach that. And I feel like between these last two films, it's starting to get a lot more intentional and artful in. And not just, hey.
Yeah, that's a good word.
The dynamic is not just that you have Doctor Strange interacting with Iron Man. And again, I love those movies. Like, I'm not trying to bash them. But it's not just that. But it's also, can we do something with the camera to help the visual effects feel even more grandiose or real, without it being like, look at these visual effects we have. Does that make sense?
No, like, totally.
That's taking a step up.
No, that's so right. And this is one of those where I would love to see, I'm not saying it will, but I would love to see this movie get some nods come award season for like set design, because I know that it's like, a lot of it looks, it's simple and it's retro and they're doing the kind of Kubrick color thing, but it's so striking, and it feels like they got this kind of, I mean, it's important too, because you get this warmth from the mid-century vibe that they have through the whole Baxter building, but then you have like the bridge design for each of those feels like, again, they were capturing, like, it's sort of a hard thing to do, to capture
like
something
on StarCraft or something.
It feels like Star Trek, like old school Star Trek, like something where it's like you're doing, it feels both futuristic and retro, again, which is the term they're using. This, like, the highest compliment that I can pay to this, to your point, is like, I know that this is its own movie, and I love how much this and Thunderbolts feel entirely different,
insanely separated.
Like, do not feel like they were made by the same studio, but are both, I think, some of the better things that Marvel's made, certainly in a while, but I think ever. And this movie, though, like, there are parts of it visually that I just, like, I would love to see Destin Daniel Cretton steal for, like, the next Spider-Man movie. Like, something that just feels kind of this, like, obviously this was, like, we're going to space and it's massive proportions, but it also felt really grounded. Like, that last battle sequence with Galactus, if you even call it that, felt so like it was in this Manhattan. And I think that that's something that, like, I have missed even back in the parts of the MCU that I love, like, but especially, like, I saw Tom Holland the other day talking about, because of, like, the pandemic, so much of No Way Home was on a soundstage.
Yeah, it was odd too.
And again, that's like, I don't think anyone is criticizing them for that. But it is, like, I know that they're looking to make something feel a lot more grounded, and this is, like, this feels, yeah, like they've cleared a new bar.
I could spin that into so many different aspects of the film, because we're talking just about the visual aspect right now, but man, I just want to reiterate, it just really feels like Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios are on, like, a generational run right now, and they are, like, it's kind of like you might miss it if you're not careful here, because I feel like all these films are starting to have, like, stamps.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four came out, and they're both, like, top 10 projects for us, and so different, but that they're able to now kind of lean into these directors with these feels. Like, I think Jake is going to do an unbelievable job with the X-Men. I feel like that's a perfect person to have do that. But we said
Is that confirmed, by the way?
Yes.
Okay.
Matt Shakman.
You should explain for our listeners that don't know the context there.
The director of Thunderbolts is going to be rebooting the X-Men with a new X-Men film post, I think, Secret Wars. I think probably the first movie after Secret Wars. That's the rumor. That's not confirmed. It is confirmed he is doing that. Kevin Feige said in that interview that Jake is doing that, and he's excited about it. And I think that's really good news, because he proved in Thunderbolts he has this feel for the tangible and all the practical effects, and he really handled the band of misfit characters, I thought, so
that's
well.
What I was going to say, yeah.
Which is perfect for X-Men. But then we talked about how Matt Shakman is probably a perfect director for Fantastic Four because of the 60s aesthetic, what he had done with WandaVision, etc. But then he also had some background with, like, Game of Thrones and some of the more epic scale type stuff.
Yeah.
And it just delivers on all that. And so I feel like they're making, like, Brave New World was a misstep. If you remove Brave New World from this equation, you go back to Deadpool and Wolverine, and I feel like Deadpool and Wolverine had the care from Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
That, like, this was like a lifelong project they were working toward.
Yeah.
And I think Guardians 3, you'd say the same thing about Gunn wanting to close out his Guardians trilogy. So I feel like you look at these and you're like, they are making all the right steps by leaning into these genres in the most like, they're all kind of perfect versions of what they're trying to be. And I was just really hoping that this movie would continue that trend, and it did. I have so many things I want to talk about outside of just how good it looked, but I can't stop thinking about how good it looked. There was a shot where they're in the Fantastic car and they're going right underneath Galactus, and they look up through the window, and it just shows Galactus looking down, and the scale of that. I felt like it was genuinely terrifying. Honestly, partnered with Giacchino's score, which I thought was magnificent.
Yeah.
There are some movies that you watch, comic book movies that you watch, that the music is fun and adds to it, but it's not the full experience. I feel like kind of throughout the film, I felt the score here.
Yeah.
Like, again, a perfect fit for this kind of movie. Giacchino does this sincere thing as good as anyone in the world, literally.
Yeah.
I just think about, like, how much I love Hans Zimmer.
Yeah.
But I don't want Hans Zimmer's thing for this.
No, and
you see what I'm saying? Like, and I love him.
And I, like,
Giacchino's the one for this.
No, for sure. And it's, and I love, like, his score for the Batman is one of my favorites that he's done, and it's so different from this. And that's impressive in itself. But this feels like the one where it's like Matt Shakman seems tailor-made for this movie. And I hope that if they continue this as, like, a franchise, I hope that Shakman gets to hold the reins the same way that, like, Gunn did for the Guardians. Because this feels like I mean, I like, we should also step back and I think this applies to Giacchino because the score is incredible, and we'll talk about that more. But like on the Shackman front, they have cracked a code here that is literally decades in the making.
Yeah.
I mean, like, they have tried to make a Fantastic Four movie. There was the one that they made that was basically just for rights preservation. Yeah. That was a B movie. There were, like, the two that they made in the 2000s.
And we talked about this on Friends from Work Plus, by the way. We went through these movies, and you can hear that on Friends from Work Plus. You can subscribe right now.
And the 2015, like...
And they are colossal failures.
All of them.
Like, and I'm not just trying to be a jerk about it. That is a perfect context. Like, the fact that this is a top 10 thing they've ever made is fantastic. I mean, it's unbelievable when you watch just how bad, like, the 2015 movie is.
Yeah.
How soulless that movie is, I guess. And I'm not trying to put anyone down, but it is crazy the difference here.
I mean, like, think about, like, the things that they, like...
Unrecognizable, honestly. You wouldn't be able to know it's the same movie other than the names are the same.
The biggest difference, like, in the easiest one to start with, if we're talking, like, character stuff, which we should at some point, and maybe this is a good time, is Sue. Like, I mean, Jessica Alba's Sue Storm was...
There was no naked scenes.
It was only opportunities for her to be naked.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, like, that is, like, they leaned into naked Jessica Alba and, like, hot, shirtless, also kind of naked Chris Evans. Yeah, and that was, like, it was just, they let that kind of, like...
carry. Which, honestly,
carry two films. But, like, here it's, like, I think what I love is, one, they give us such, like, I love the version of Sue that we get that is almost like a political leader.
Yes, it's so much better, dude.
I mean, she
Vanessa
is like...
Kirby was awesome.
Oh, she was so good. But also, like, I think I had heard so much about how great Vanessa Kirby was that, like... One, I still think that it exceeded my expectations. I loved, like, the labor scene with, like, the zero gravity labor.
It was
like,
so freaking intense, though.
Oh, dude, so much of that movie, like, that, it flew by. The whole movie flew by for me because I was just like, it all, like, I looked down and it was like an hour and 15 in, and I thought we were like 45 minutes in.
And not cutting those serious things with jokes, which a lot of times we love the jokes, but yeah, like, that scene is so intense, and I love how quickly you're about to praise the other cast too.
Yeah.
How quickly the two uncles could go between ribbing each other to like, Reed, what's the plan?
Yeah.
To very serious, like, listening to Reed.
And here,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
no, totally.
Call the shots.
And that's like, and this is a perfect way to get into, like, Johnny, who I think, for me, it's weird to say this because we've said that in the prior Fantastic Four iterations, I think Chris Evans and Michael B. Jordan were the standouts. And here, because of how much I knew they were putting a focus on Vanessa Kirby Sue, because of how excited I was about this version of, I mean, obviously Pedro Pascal's Reed, this version of The Thing, like, I feel like Joseph Quinn, I was really excited about the casting, but I wasn't looking for that to be a standout, but it totally was for me. And what I love about it is that, like, he brings some of that energy that you see from, like, the kind of, like, you know, he's the most immature, he's, like, obsessed with girls, he's, like, you see the, like, pinups and stuff. But I love, like, when they're in those space scenes, like, he knows how to work the ship.
I was going to say, they kind of did that character a ton of justice because instead of him just being that, like, Chris Evans on the motorcycle, you know, trying to kiss the girl while she's driving, instead of that, they actually leaned into, he kind of solved the language barrier by himself. Yeah. It was like his smarts that saved the day.
Yeah. He's not, like, the one that has to be, like, convinced to grow up, you know? Like, he's actually...
And he's part of the conversation to the whole world. He's on the phone line talking to people. When they're in space, he's helping drive.
Like, he's...
And I loved a couple times where Reed just goes, Johnny? And he would just go, like, like he knew what that meant. So it's like he was still kind of a badass.
You know something else that I love, like, about Johnny here? And I love this because, like, the Human Torch is such a fun comic character that's just never gotten his due. And one thing that I think, again, like, maybe this is a visual thing, maybe this is a story thing, but, like, there's a world where Johnny like at the end of the movie, right? Like Galactus is marching through Manhattan. There's a world where Johnny flies up to him and like hits him with the like craziest burst of flames. Then like the smoke clears and it hasn't done anything. And it's just like, oh my gosh, he's so powerful. But I love that they didn't do that, because that always feels like such a like, well, now the power levels are such that I don't understand what the stakes are at all. Like, this person is so powerful that nothing is even like impacting him. But instead, I love that Johnny actually does like
burn his eyes out for a second.
Yeah, he's like on fire walking, or like whenever they escape from his ship in the first place, they're able to actually like dismantle his ship temporarily and get away. And like
that scene looked so cool.
It looks so cool
when they're going through the wormhole.
But there's something about it that feels like there's a tangible impact to the stuff that they're doing. And I know that that's a small thing.
I love that with the power levels.
But yeah, it's just like, I don't know. Sometimes it feels a little bit like it's like the Dragon Ball Z effect, where it's like, we're going to show that this person is so powerful by showing this other hero that we know to be really strong doing the craziest powerful thing they can do and it not affecting them at all.
I mean, I feel like they handled the whole ending with all of that stuff perfectly. Like, Galactus felt legitimately terrifying. Mm-hmm. And for a while, you thought he may never be defeated. And I think they did the right thing by he wasn't really defeated. He was just kind of sent somewhere else. Like, they knew they couldn't defeat him, so they trick him. But then the tricking doesn't kind of work. It feels like everyone's contributing, like you're saying, but it's not like anyone's overpowered.
Yeah.
And yet Johnny's still going to sacrifice at the end, but then it's ultimately the Silver Surfer that does the last little push into the thing, which feels like way more appropriate than how they handled it in 2007, where like Johnny actually got to her, but not in like a weird way.
Yeah.
And yet just enough for her to be like, you know what? Let's protect this one world, knowing she may be going to her death with wherever Galactus is going.
Yeah.
Like none of it felt like, and a couple times they even hit the Silver Surfer to where it seemed like it stunned her.
Yeah.
And they tricked her. So it's like, okay, that worked too.
And I love
but not so much that they were just like easily beating the bad guys either. It was like a perfect balance of like, you felt the threat, but still believable the solution.
And that's like that. Yeah. That's the other piece.
And I love, sorry. I also loved how many times the plan didn't work.
Yeah.
Which is great. Like, first they're going to, let me see if I can go back. But even before they build all the towers, they're going to try something else. I can't remember now, but it doesn't work. Then they build the towers get ruined. Then they put Franklin as the bait, and then that doesn't work because he catches it. So like, there's like 5 steps where you're like, and then they finally get him through the portal, and he starts coming back out. The portal, then you're like, oh, it still didn't work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, and that's such a, like, again, to kind of talk about the different characters, like, that's, like, everyone kind of gets their moment.
Yeah.
Where, like, Reed invents the whole bridge and has that great, like, the moment where Galactus is, like, pulling him apart.
The stretchy powers also looked insanely cool.
They looked great.
It was possible to do it in a cool way. When he's like climbing up him and actually like stabbing parts of his back to where it's like hurting Galactus.
And that's the thing. It's like Reed is old, like he's able to look at his suit and he's seen the way it functions with the machine that he uses to harvest the worlds. So he knows like how to, like he intuitively knows what to do. And that's like the most like he's using his stretchy powers to like get up there, but he's using his kind of instincts and understanding of it. And then, also, but like the moment with Sue where she's like, it's this like out of the kind of like protective, motherly, just like goes all out to. It's such a like.
And this is weird to get into, but there's actually like a little bit of like a science behind this. Like there's an actual thing that mothers are able to do. That's like, so for example, this is gonna sound crazy. Okay, I'm gonna blow your mind. This is so dumb. I had like when I was like in young 6th, 7th grade, I had a friend who, remember those like back in the early 2000s or late 90s, those massive big screen TVs, the ones that had the deep backs. I'm talking like 150 pounds.
Yeah,
like a big screen TV fell on my friend when he was a kid. And like couldn't get out, and his mom was able to come down out of nowhere and lift the thing off. And it's like, she was not that strong or like any of that size. There's like something unexplainable. I'm serious about like this.
Isn't it? No, I think I've read about
like,
this.
When like their child's life is in danger.
I think
there's like another gear.
Well, yeah, it's like something shifts where it's like a loss of self-preservation where like I think your body normally tells you like this is it's almost like an artificial limit because if you go beyond this, you are like risking some like catastrophic damage.
Now,
Like you
I'm
can't
not going
actually
to act like some scientist here, but I've heard about this thing.
Yeah, no, I
and
think
so, like,
that's right.
I found the end as a father too. I found the ending to be very moving and kind of believable. That like
And it does kill her.
like they know they're going to lose, and like in her last effort, it's like she can give 50% more.
Yeah.
That's enough to push him back.
And that like that scene was so powerful and gave her that moment. And also like, man, the like Pedro Pascal's acting when she's gone actually like cut. Like that was a great like
yes, it was.
man.
Even though we both looked at each other and said, "It's Franklin's going to heal her."
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and like they handled that so well, and but then yeah, each character gets their due. I think Sue is
There was
getting
a shot of Johnny's eyes all teared up.
yeah.
That was really good.
Well, and again, it's like I just they got everything right with that stuff. Like
and Ben just goes like to read like
and
you know what I'm talking about?
and that's the other thing that I have to to close it out, because we've talked about at least in part the other three, but like Ben, that is the character that I think has maybe been done the dirtiest by the other adaptations.
For sure.
Like
That's not a hot take.
especially the 2015 one. Like I don't even know what they were going for, but the other ones like it's
Yeah.
but this was like there's something about Ben Grimm and the comics that, and this was not like they found this over time. Like if you read the original like first couple Fantastic Four comics, Ben is like kind of a jerk because he's so bitter that he's been turned into the Thing, and over time they find out, like they find a voice for him, but he is this like gentle giant, like he's the like sweet, like the he's like, there's something super comforting about the character when he's written well. In this movie, like
It's that. And they did just enough of the insecurity hinting.
Yeah.
Like the one shot in the TV you see from the trailer,
Yeah.
but also the just enough scenes with this girl that he's kind of interested in, but kind of knows.
The stuff with him and Reed, when Reed's like, when he's like, we're getting too close to the neutron star, and Reed's like, no, well, it'll work. And they have that moment of like the last time Reed said that,
I
things
just
went really
like how
badly.
much of like a team player and kind guy he was versus the other iterations. Kind of feels like, I don't know. It doesn't feel like this.
No, like I don't.
And in 2015, when he's so pissed at Reed, and it's like it's more moody, and I don't know.
No, this was like,
feels like I want to hug him.
dude. It's in like. That was the casting I was the most immediately excited about, because I've enjoyed like Moss Backrack's stuff and everything else that I've
He
like.
also looked so freaking cool.
Oh, so good. And like, but this was, I told you earlier, there were the little clips that I saw that Marvel released, I never know quite how to interact with, because sometimes it's hard for me to settle into whatever the vibe is when they just pull these little bits out. And I wasn't quite sure how much the chemistry was going to work. And that's what I was not nervous about, but I thought that this whole thing was going to hinge on that, because you need the four to feel like a family unit. And so it can't be anything. I mean, that's a big part of why the other two franchises don't work at all, because when they're trying to do that, they don't do it. And sometimes they're not even trying to. But like, yeah, man, the chemistry among all four, it just feels so immediately natural and lived in and believable. And like the little, like it felt very much like Homecoming to me in Spider-Man Homecoming, in that you get just enough like origin stuff for, like the Fantastic Four origin is not as well known as Spider-Man's, which is one of, if not the most well-known superhero origin out there. But it's fairly straightforward. They go to space, they come back, and they have powers. And so they cover it quickly, but they do it with the old footage, so you see like what they all looked like beforehand, and then they just kind of like, you immediately feel thrust into this like kind of classic. But the difference is here from Homecoming they're taking the like classic comics, but they're sort of transposing them and putting it in a more modern, 2010s environment. And this was just like, all of it feels like those relationships like live and breathe, but it's like, it's not like a time capsule. It's like something that, I don't know. I'm so torn now because, and we can talk more about this as we talk about like the MCU of it all, but I'm like, I'm so excited for what all of this could be setting up for Doomsday, but I think the highest compliment I could pay for this film is that I am as interested in just more of this as I am in whatever it's setting up in like Doomsday and Secret Wars.
Okay, we'll get into that after a quick word from these sponsors. Right, quickly, I want to tell you about 3 ways you can support this podcast. First is organicpricedbooks.com, the official comic book provider of Friends from Work. Use our promo code Friends from Work to save even more money on what are already really discounted comics. Homage.com. If you use the link in our show notes, you can let them know that we sent you. They make all kinds of incredible nerd merchandise and some cool throwback sports merchandise. And go to the ffwpodcast.com/shop to get yourself some Friends from Work merch, like this shirt that I'm wearing right here, and feel as cool as I did while watching Galactus eat things in the theater. Look at that.
Wow.
He's right there.
That is like...
Yeah, it's pretty perfect.
It's pretty perfect.
Shout
out Jacoby Warlock.
The ffwpodcast.com/shop, homage.com, and organicpricebooks.com. Okay. I just saw a couple of people briefly say or mention that the plot wasn't like overly complicated. Like, I think that's one thing that a couple people said. I liked this movie, but didn't love it. That was one of the things they were pointing out, is just the plot wasn't much. And I think that's kind of funny. I think you're laughing too, because I actually think that's weirdly one of the strengths of the film. Like, the reason we were able to talk for 40 minutes already about
patterns are so complicated.
the reason we're able to talk about all that other stuff, I think, is partially because they let the plot be pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
I mean, in some ways, it's the reason Infinity War can thrive too, is like, it's a different kind of movie, right? Like, if you go the Nolan route and you're telling a bunch of time travel stuff, that can really work too. But this clearly wasn't wanting to be that. This wanted to be like a classic comic movie that wasn't as tied to everything else.
Yeah.
I think because the plot is pretty straightforward and there aren't a lot of subplots, like, think about this for a second. There's almost no other characters in this movie outside of the Fantastic Four, Galactus and Silver Surfer. They're one like press secretary and the talk show host. Yeah. Outside of that, it's almost all the one girl from the shop. It's almost all just faceless people, like fans that live in the city. Yeah. And like, think about it, it is not a large cast of a bunch of sectors.
And you're right.
But I think you can't do that in a movie that's already an ensemble movie. You're trying to establish 4 characters that we feel the chemistry is that good. You're trying to make Galactus feel believable and lived in and be legitimately terrified of. You're trying to give a tiny bit of backstory to Silver Surfer. There just isn't room for a ton of other plots outside of maybe the fact that Franklin, well, that's the main plot. That Franklin's being, we used to think that was going to be a subplot, and that kind of becomes the plot of the movie. Yeah. My point is, by minimizing the subplots, by minimizing the other characters, some people may see that as they were wanting more. I see it as it maximized the other stuff, and therefore I think in 5 years, 10 years, this is a movie that I think people will just be able to throw on and not have some other baggage with it.
And that's what I love. Like, I feel like, looking through, and this makes sense, with the nature of the MCU, I think like the only movie I can think of that that feels that way is like Guardians 1, where it feels like a kind of timeless, like you can put that on and have zero understanding of like what the MCU even is, not just because of like, oh, it doesn't rely on the Earth-based plot stuff, but it like gives you what you need, and you finish that movie, and you can not even go watch like Guardians 2 or Guardians 3, and you still feel like, wow, this is like just one satisfying, well-made, like top to bottom blockbuster superhero film. And this feels like
Good point.
a different, very different version of that, but that.
Yeah, because there were virtually no references to Earth in that movie, as far as like the Avengers and all that. And I'm thinking about the other option. Like even if you choose like Thor Ragnarok, which is like an amazing standalone movie, you are relying a little bit on your knowledge of Bruce,
right,
and like the Hulk. You're right. I'm trying to think. By the time you get to Guardians 2 or 3, you're relying on your knowledge of Guardians 1 and 2. Almost any of the Avengers are going to rely on some of the Avengers movies for their standalone films.
No, I mean,
Iron Man 1 is probably the other closest thing.
Which, just because it was the first.
Yeah, because there was nothing else to tie it to.
But yeah, I think that is and
even Thunderbolts, which is an incredible standalone movie. You can easily watch it, but still, it's characters from Disney Plus shows.
Right. And, or Black Widow, I think that this movie, like that is one of the things that I think just like initial reaction, this movie will do better or has done better than Superman. Like, and I will say, like, I really like the approach that Gunn took with Superman of just kind of not being intent on building out a world, like I said.
Haven't seen it yet, so just be careful.
But no. But there's a lot going on in that movie, and I think he sort of revels in it. Like he wants you to start that movie and feel like you just went to the comic book store and grabbed whatever the new issue of Superman is, and you opened it up, and it's like, here we are. Like, we're in it. We're just right in the middle of it. There are characters that you just kind of assume that he's known and interacted with. And that's fun in a different way. And I think one of the things that I love is how much both of those movies, while kind of capturing this classic comic book thing, are interested in different aspects of it. But I do think that I view that as a strength for the Fantastic Four, because I think about people like I go and watch Superman, and I am someone that reads a lot of comics. And so it's hard for me to even judge it objectively, because I'm so well versed in that language at this point. But most people that go see it, the vast majority of people that go see it, do not.
I'll be a really interesting test subject.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think
because I still probably know more than just like Joe Schmo.
Right.
But not much.
And so it's like like Candace really enjoyed Superman, but I think her one big note or question walking out was like, did it need the number of like characters and subplots that it had? Because
which some people may love, to your point. Like
exactly.
That may be what draws the people that critique this movie to that.
Right. But I think that I think that they're both valid lanes, but I think for what this movie was doing, for the vibe that they were going for, like I also think it would have cut against the sort of like classic like 60s era New York vibe if they made it too like superhero infused,
convoluted or complex too, or anything.
Like I kind of liked the fact that you have like Pan Am and like these actual companies from our world, where really what they're doing is just saying, like, here's a like the 60s is essentially like what you would think of the 60s as being. Like, for all we know, like JFK is president. The only difference is these like astronauts get superpowers, and then everything like shifts from there. And I think that if you then make the entire world like all of these crazy things that are different that the Fantastic Four have done, you lose a lot of that charm. So I think it was important for them to really make it like, yes, we see the impact they've had. We find out about Mole Man, and we find out about like the Wizard and the Mad Thinker and Red Ghost, but it's like ultimately it's a recognized, it's the world outside your window. Like that's what I mean whenever it is like the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, like it's their imagining of this.
The world outside your window if there was a giant planet eating,
Right.
but for real,
But
like,
you
guy coming.
and you have to have that though. Like it's like what I always say about the
It's also so the world outside your window, even in how the world reacts, because
Right.
like there are tons of novels like this where like all of the geopolitical disagreements we have would come to an end a la like Independence Day if faced with an existential threat.
Yeah.
So like it's believable to me that there's a world where the Fantastic Four are celebrated, and now the Fantastic Four are asking you to save the planet. I mean, we saw a tiny glimpse of this even with COVID, where like that first 3 weeks,
Yeah.
most of the people in the world were like, okay, let's shut down. And
Right.
everyone was kind of like on board with that across the world.
Yeah.
I like that. Like,
Yeah.
they're able to get the whole world behind this thing, you know? So
Yeah.
like it felt like if a planet-eating god was coming to your planet and you knew you were doomed, this felt like a believable response if it could be real.
No, and that is like that's the thing that separates the Marvel sci-fi from like classically Marvel sci-fi from like Dune or something, right? Where it's like
Yeah, sure.
like you need
You are not trying to ask people that Dune is happening outside your window to believe that.
right. Like you're almost trying to immerse them
Yes.
in a totally
So
unfamiliar
much somewhere else.
Yes. But here it's like it's what I always say about like Lord of the Rings that I think has made it so hard for them to capture in any other like Middle Earth projects is like you have to have like the role of the hobbits is not like as much as you know everyone watches those movies and their favorite characters are like Aragorn and Legolas because they're the like cool ones, but it works because you have all of that seen through the lens of the characters that you relate more to, which are the hobbits, and so all of it seems even more like fantastic and grander in scope because you have that anchor point. And so I think in the Fantastic Four, the whole world that they create is that anchor point so that then you can have them go to Galactus's, like to his ship and see all that, but then come back and it feels like you feel the stakes, you feel the emotion more. Like it's all like the way that they paint the setting as a whole, but also the way that it grounds the characters, I think is not incidental. Like I think that is kind of fundamental to what this movie's doing, and that is different than what you're seeing even again in like something like Superman, and I think in what you've seen in other Marvel movies that I really love. Like that's why I keep saying it's you know Fantastic Four the comic was in some ways the kind of there's so many ways it's different from Spider-Man, but one thing that it did similarly is create this family dynamic of kind of flawed people that would fight and bicker and have issues and money problems. And that sort of set up Spider-Man to be the kind of quintessential version of the everyman. And the Fantastic Four sort of split off from that and became more the like hopeful explorers. But I think that it's still important, like what made the Fantastic Four work and what separated them from the other comics on the stands in the 60s and the early 60s, like Batman and Superman. It like instead of them just saving the day and then going back and like living their perfect lives, you kind of felt the things that they did and saw impacted them on a personal level and impacted the people around them and carried forward into their shared relationship. And so I think that that's something that here you see show up like in the macro and the micro, in part because of the chemistry and the relationship they have, but again, in part because of the way that Shackman is so intent on like creating a world that feels like fully realized, and that's just one of the reasons why I came into it excited at least like 50% just to see how it was moving the ball forward. You know, like okay, this must tee up Doomsday, and I'm not any less excited about that. But I just love it so much that I'm like I hope that we get to spend more time in this world.
Well, in that way, you better be thankful that we were incorrect in our predictions of this world ending and whatever.
Yeah.
Like, they left the door open that this world could keep going. Before I get into the MCU-ness of it, I wanted to say one last thing. We talked about this already, but I was listening to you talk and how the world's fully lived in, and I was thinking about, what makes a lot of these teams a good team is when everyone contributes. You never want that one guy in like the Avengers where you go like, what are you doing?
Right.
Or what can this person do in this situation? And yeah, like I was just thinking like everyone does really get their moment, like think back to the 2005, 7 and 15 Fantastic Four films. Like especially the final fight of the 2005 one. I just feel like a ton of it kind of comes down to Johnny beats that Doctor Doom.
Yeah.
And Reed's not doing a ton. He tries to do some stuff. Like,
yeah.
I'm just thinking about like in this movie now, obviously Sue has the crazy ending, the pushing Galactus back moment.
Yeah.
But like we talked about Johnny not only using his fire powers and have them be impactful, but also contributing like with the smarts, with solving the language barrier, with driving the ship. Ben ends up being so supportive in this film. Yes, he does have some physical cool things. He punches Galactus one time to get the baby back.
Yeah.
Like he does a couple fighting things, but really I think his superpower is like that he's right there with Reed. He's supporting Reed. He's holding the baby often.
Yeah.
He is physically supporting the team and emotionally supporting the team when they need it.
Yeah.
That he's there. And so like I feel like he was so well developed, and then Reed is not just the smart guy. They do lean into the stretchy powers, he uses them in cool ways.
Yeah.
But also lean into I think the perfect balance of his brain power.
Yeah.
To constantly be thinking of solving. Like I think about that Solve Everything comic. Like it feels like they really did nail the way Reed is trying to think about stuff with the stretchy powers. Like it feels like they all needed all four to actually succeed, and not just like, oh, we have this one trump card. Well, like they all contributed.
And what I love about the way that they imagine Reed's intellect here is like, there's something about just because, the game in so many ways is just how do you make it different at this point. It's not me saying it's better or worse, but there were points with like Tony or Bruce or Shuri where part of the way that you show how smart they are is just by having them say a bunch of like really sciencey sounding things, and then they like just like have this crazy invention, and you're like, whoa, they're crazy smart, which is totally fine and I think works.
Whoa.
But like I like that like here it's not that. Like Reed kind of takes you through like Archimedes, like he's walking through these like kind of traditional formulas.
I even liked in the battle the tricking of Silver Surfer with the ship.
Yeah. Which and that's
quick thought of,
And that's the other thing that I love about the Fantastic Four is like I think the two things that I would say make them unique as a team within the Marvel pantheon is one, there's this kind of like family dynamic that we've talked about, where as cheesy as it is, there's like a love that is shared that is inherently different from the Avengers, which has always kind of felt like, if not like paramilitary, it feels like a group of like warriors coming together. Like they're fighting, like they're fighters. I mean, the whole Avengers is like they're fighting the battles no one else can, and so that's a difference. But also, like the other piece of that is I think that like they are like the Fantastic Four are not warriors; they're problem solvers.
Yeah, right. It's a big difference.
And you see that like over and over again in this movie. Like there are not really many moments where they're just like their sheer strength is what saves the day.
Right, but it makes the future so tantalizing because I want to see them interact with Thor, who is like a warrior king, like not saying he's dumb, but like he's going to think through that lens first. That's why the more distinct you can make each one of these people and teams, the more those interactions become even more fun when you get them, because now it's like, you want to see that juxtaposition.
Yeah.
That's the cool part about it. If they're all Tony Stark replicas, it's not as cool.
I mean, even the fact that like, Mole Man is a Fantastic Four villain that Sue has made into an ally. Like that's such a different.
Butter me up.
That was so funny. But that's such a different thing, right? Like, we haven't really seen that dynamic because that's not really how the Avengers operate.
But there's kind of comic precedent in that one comic I read.
Totally.
They go down there and they're like, I mean, they're adversaries, but they like, Mole Man shows them around and shows them the problems they're having. Remember that?
Yeah. Well, and like in the comic you've read also, like, Reed the Wizard, they like name check in this. We don't see the character, but that's like a classic Fantastic Four villain. And Reed is like genuinely trying to like rehabilitate the Wizard. Like, he's like trying to get him like help, like help him from like a mental health perspective. He's like caring for this like clone that he made of himself and trying to raise him as a good person. Like, there's just this level of like,
as you do,
like there's a level of like actual, like, again, like hope. But the end goal is not to just defeat the threats. Like, I think that's one thing that is different. Like, they're not trying to just like keep everything safe. They're trying to actually make everything better. Like, make the world a better place, not just like a safer place.
Right. Okay, I promise. Now let's get into Doomsday, Thunderbolts, and the MCU-ness after a quick word from these sponsors. Okay, so go back a few months. We're watching Thunderbolts, and this is obviously spoilers for that movie as well. In the post-credit sequence, there's this multiversal entity detected. It's the Fantastic Four theme and that ship coming towards Earth. We, when we watched it the first time, assumed that is the Fantastic Four in this ship coming to Earth to what? We assumed maybe warn the Thunderbolts of something. Now, fast forward to this film, we don't have a ton of like time markers because it's a different universe. Mm-hmm. However, they do go out of their way to say this is the ending of this movie is 4 years after what we saw. Now, they could just be saying 4 years after just to clarify that Franklin is now 5 years old or so. And maybe that's the only thing. Or I guess my point is, who is in that Thunderbolt ship? And when this movie takes place, like juxtaposed to our universe, kind of matters too. Because, I mean, is it possible that, first of all, is it possible that Doom is actually in that ship?
Yeah.
Is it possible that Doom is already on the Sacred Timeline Earth, and this is the Fantastic Four trying to track down him and Franklin because of the post-credit scene, them trying to get back? Or is it that Doom just says something scary enough or spook him enough for Reed to then figure out multiversal travel to warn other places of this, or whatever is coming? Like, now kind of the possibility, like, this is not them escaping their universe falling apart,
right?
Which is kind of what we thought. So the possibilities are pretty endless. By the way, I just gotta say, it did do my heart some good to actually see a cape and a mask at the end.
I know.
No lines or anything, but
I know. I was like, oh, I would have loved to see a hint of it, but I get that they want to continue building the.
Yeah. No, that was a pretty effective way to do it. I kind of thought he would be in it. You thought maybe just a hint.
Yeah.
It was kind of halfway,
and we talked about this. They do have, so, okay, a couple things before I forget. One, I think that the 4 years later time card was intentional, because if it were just to show that he's older, you can just show him being,
Okay, so what about the 4 years matches with what we know, though?
I mean, I just have to believe that the 4 years later for them lines up. I mean, because this is, I know originally it was supposed to go straight from this to Doomsday. Is Brand New Day now supposed to come out before Doomsday?
Correct.
Okay.
And I guess I'm just saying, like, I don't know. Let's just hypothetically say Doom has hijacked this ship and he's stolen Franklin and he's on that ship.
Well, so that before we go there, that was going to be my next question, though. Where do you think Doom is originating from?
Okay. Well, I guess I say I don't know. Because I wonder, like, we don't necessarily know that time hasn't passed besides that. My point is, like, what if they open up the ship in the Thunderbolts world and Franklin is 12? There's no marker tying the two together, right? So
Right.
maybe Franklin and Doom have already had years of history. I'm not saying it's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And like the Fantastic Four have been chasing him for 7 years. That could theoretically be the thing. That's why I don't know why specify 4 years.
Yeah.
Unless there's like, because in Thunderbolts, and I need to watch it again, but they
it was-
specified what, 18 months or 13 months or
Yeah,
something?
I think it was 13 months. And yeah, I mean, and they do say it's been 4 years since they got their powers, so maybe there's also kind of a symmetry there. But yeah.
Yeah, so they go out of their way in this film to show Latveria.
That's what I was
and
gonna
the
say,
scene
yeah.
is open. So I think you're either doing that as a wink to the audience, as just like a fun Easter egg, or you're doing it because this version of Doom comes from this, like maybe the Doom we're gonna get comes
Yeah.
from this world.
I mean, which I would prefer that. Like, I don't want Reed to meet Doctor Doom for the first time as a multiversal thing. Like, I think if there is one relationship at the core of the Marvel universe in terms of like a hero villain dynamic, it is Reed and Doom. And so I think that is something where, we didn't get any history in this movie. And I think that that's fine, in part because we've seen every other Fantastic Four movie, including Rise of the Silver Surfer, has to always sort of shoehorn Doom in, and it has never felt right. And so I was fine with them, like, let's focus on the Doom setup, or on the Fantastic Four setup, and we're going to get a whole lot of Doctor Doom. Like, I think if there's one relationship that you want to nail, it's them. And so I like that they have built up, like, there's no reason, and I think I saw Shackman say this. I mean, I know that he cut, like, John Malkovich's Red Ghost appearance ahead of time. I know that he had talked about wanting to not try to do Doom and Galactus in the same film, which I think was 100% the right call. I think that would have felt like if we had gotten scenes of Doom watching things play out with Galactus, it just would have been the thing that you and I would have talked about, like Riri Williams in Wakanda Forever, where it's just like,
Which Ironheart slaps, by the way.
oh,
so
no,
go
for
watch
sure,
it. Go
for
watch
sure.
it.
No, we should be clear. That's not like an anti-Riri thing. It just felt a little bit like, is this one subplot too many?
Sure.
Or at least like in the scope.
Yep.
So I like that they didn't do it here, but I do think that they left the door open for there to have been Doctor Doom encounters that they just haven't discussed. Like, they kind of give us a medley hodgepodge of like these different things. But I like the idea that we could still be getting the kind of classic Doom Reed origin of them having met in school and being rivals, and then meeting each other as kind of superhero and supervillain way down the line. And I think that would make the whole thing feel more personal, like him showing up there. I like the idea of Sue recognizing Doom in that moment, and it not just being like this like other, sinister version from some other universe. Like, I do think that would be my preference, but I don't have any we don't have any indication. But I think that the Latveria references would be weird if they weren't trying to show, like, they were too intentional for there not to be. Like,
And then the question is that Tony Stark?
Yeah, I mean,
because they can't really do both, like we talked
right,
about.
Right. I mean, and that's the other piece, though. Like, that would make sense, right? I mean, it's definitely not from 616, because we know, like, it wouldn't make any sense to have an RDJ that was a Doctor Doom there. And I don't know that is there any reason to have him come from some random universe rather than the Fantastic Four one?
Yeah, right. If not that one, is it going to be what, the X-Men universe? I mean, or just another one.
Right.
Seems like it's probably coming from this one. In which case, I don't know if his name will actually be Tony Stark, but we talked about, like, is it a Tony Stark kind of like where this Tony Stark makes the other decision at all these different steps that leads to this point?
Yeah, I mean, is he going to have like an accent at all? Like, I feel like no.
Probably not.
Like, I think that they know
I think he'll
that,
just be affected behind the mask kind of voice.
yeah. Well, and that's the other thing. He took the mask off.
Well, for the baby.
Yeah, yeah. And like, but that is I'm sure composition wise it's so we can see the mask and the, but like, I mean, do you think that like, do we still think that he's horribly disfigured the way that Doom is supposed to be, or do you think that
I do.
Okay.
I do. So the other thing that we haven't talked about a ton before this was like how much Franklin is the key figure in all this. And I hadn't read I've never read the Secret Wars comic, so I guess I wasn't aware of how much Franklin was a key figure in this, a key cog. But now, not only is Galactus going for Franklin because he senses that Franklin would be able to relieve him of his duty, his never-ending appetite, I guess.
Yeah.
That he could pass that on to him and then he can rest. But Doom is also wanting Franklin, probably because he, I guess, is sensing that these incursions are coming.
Yeah.
And therefore, maybe Franklin can help him build a new world. And this is like the first being like that he's...
Well, and that, like, yeah, I mean, because he has essentially the power of Galactus. I mean, the power cosmic, I told you this is like in the comics, specifically associated with Galactus and his heralds. And they intentionally use that term with Franklin. So I think that...
And I think they intentionally showed like Sue's eyes looking like a galaxy when he brought her back.
Yeah. I mean, we got... And I liked this. Like, I frankly thought this movie would be a lot more multiverse stuff than we got. And I love that it wasn't, because I always felt like the whole planet eating thing from Galactus is immediately rendered like kind of like limp if you then add the multiversal threat, because it's like, oh, well, what does it matter if the whole planet gets destroyed if the whole universe is going to get destroyed anyway? So I like that they didn't delve into that here, but Reed does talk about the existence of parallel timelines. So and then we have this 4-year time jump. So it does kind of make sense that like across those 4 years, maybe we are seeing results from incursions in like Reed and Doom would be able to trace those and start understanding what's happening. And, again, you could see Doom jumping straight to, okay, well, we have this baby that we now know has this insane power, and it would make sense for him to like kidnap Franklin, whether it's to create a new something or to like put some plan into motion, because ostensibly Franklin is like raw universal like generative power.
Then why come to the Thunderbolts universe?
Yeah, that's the...
Has something already begun that is going to ultimately cause an incursion for that universe already? Because like you would think it'd be like the Snap or the Avengers going back in time to reverse that.
Yeah.
But in Loki, they clarified, no, that was supposed to happen, which makes it feel like that's not an incoming incursion because of that. So has something already happened and now Reed has discovered this and he's coming to warn them? In which case, are there people on that Earth that would be able to speak that language with them? I guess Doctor Strange is just kind of learning about the multiverse.
Yeah.
And that's possible.
But yeah.
Like, Reed's got to come. If he's coming to warn, he would have to talk to somebody else, not Red Guardian, about what is happening here.
I mean, unless it's just
that the Thunderbolts or the New Avengers have to intercept this ship and they say, call up Stephen Strange.
I mean, there is the interesting like America Chavez piece of that too.
Yeah, right.
Like I think she would be the one thing about the 616 right now that would make it unique, because we know that there's only one America Chavez, and
or maybe Doom would want her.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm thinking. Like she has
to help him just get around.
Yeah, I mean, because do we know? Like, I forget the exact term that they use in Thunderbolts. Like, do we know that the Fantastic Four ship has the capability to travel across reality or different timelines? Or did it
We
just,
need
could
to
it have
watch
just
it
wound
again,
up
but
there?
it's not on
Yeah.
Disney Plus yet. They say, don't they say like a multiversal vessel is emerging or something?
Yeah, they use
It
something
says
like that.
multiversal in it.
Yeah, I mean,
So Reed has figured it out, or Doom has taken Reed's ship and figured it out, and Reed doesn't know that.
or yeah, I mean, and that's the other, or you know, the
But if
other,
it is Doom, what does he want? Yeah, maybe he wants America.
or you know, it's again like we talked about way early on, and this is what's fun about this is like I'm sure none of this is right, but it's the fun of like speculating on the MCU side. Is it more that Reed gets he realizes what's happening on like a grand scale, and that there are all of these, like that there are incursions, but then, you know, maybe he understands what Doom's plan is, and maybe it's like it is the Fantastic Four coming, and they're coming to try to like recruit help in some way, because this is a universe like the 616, like the sacred timeline is one where like Tony was like the ultimate hero, and you know, maybe if Doom is somehow like the dark side of Tony, they want to go to this universe where it was the opposite, maybe not knowing that Iron Man's gone, or maybe it's something about like, you know, being in like an Avengers world, like in the comic terminology. So maybe it is Fantastic Four and they're trying to get help.
Two other things I'm thinking, well, sorry. That also makes me think of the comic, because in that solve everything part, there's a part where Reed figures out like X amount of percent of the time that I go to Tony Stark doesn't work,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
And that seems to be like a common issue he finds in all these different.
Yeah,
So
that's
there is
true.
some history there in those two playing off each other, or not.
Yeah.
Two other things I'm thinking about. One, I'm trying to think, what are all the ways at this point that we've seen someone be able to actually travel the multiverse? We talked about America.
Yeah, who
talked-
can just do it herself.
We talked about how Kang was like different versions of Kang were not only aware of it, but we're able to like talk to each other and communicate through those portals. And like
Yeah.
Kang in Ant-Man 3 has like a multiversal core.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's another one. Obviously with Loki, the TVA has portals to all the different universes, which makes me think that if incursions are coming, okay, my understanding of the ending of Loki season 2 is that incursions aren't possible anymore because Loki's holding it all together. So something makes me think that something's happened. That's why I think, like I keep saying, I think Doomsday is going to kick off with a TVA sequence. Because I think that something outside of time has to have happened for these incursions to start again, because otherwise I think Loki was preventing those.
Yeah.
So somehow I think Loki's going to get taken off the board. Not killed, but like removed from this equation. That's going to start causing problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are my two things. But I'm also wondering, when have we seen it? Besides those times, have we seen it any other time? America.
No, yeah, and I think that's right. I think it's just the tech from like the King side, and then, you know, like even Strange, I don't think, I mean, he only travels the multiverse using America. So yeah, I think, I mean, that is
he's aware of it, but he hasn't like created a device or something to go through that.
I mean, I think it's also a question for me. Like in the comics, incursions are essentially, I mean, you find out more about it, but for the longest time, your understanding is they're basically naturally occurring, like disasters. Like it's not someone, it's like there's no one person that you could go beat to stop them. They're happening. And so that's part of what creates this, like, it's just going to keep going.
But like in Multiverse of Madness, isn't the incursion caused by like Doctor Strange messing with stuff he shouldn't mess with?
It's like by people being in realities they shouldn't be in. So why are, I mean, and that kind of comports with what King says too, like, you know, endless incursions, where it's this, like, once the multiverse is opened and they all start moving around, that's when all of this catastrophic stuff happens. And I'm asking all this to ask, like, what is Doom's motivation even going to be? Because Doom is not, like, he's been written different ways over the years. Like, there's a version of kind of jeez, I can't talk tonight. What's the word I'm
You're
looking
talking great tonight.
Megalomaniacal? Yeah, that's
Maniacal?
like where he's just trying to, like, he wants to rule everything and take everything out. And you can see him just being sadistic and going through and like, I'm going to destroy every universe. But that doesn't really feel like Doom to me. Like, I feel like the way that Doom has been written in more recent years or decades is a lot more nuanced, where it's like a lot of the time you actually kind of agree with him, but he has like no real line that he won't cross for the most part. So that's where it's like, oh, like, he's obviously willing to murder a ton of people and do these like heinous things, but in his mind, he's doing the thing like that makes sense. He's not doing it so much out of this, like, I just relish being evil. And so I'm wondering, like, what is he trying to accomplish in getting Franklin? Is it his, like, something terrible is happening and this is our, like, ace in the hole? And I don't trust the Fantastic Four to actually play that card, so I'm gonna take it.
Right. And why are incursions happening if they're not naturally occurring? Something would have had to have happened to Loki. And you're right, if Doom doesn't want them to happen, like you're saying, he's not evil, he's just going with it, then it's not Doom walking in and killing Loki or the whole TVA, right? Because that would be him being evil and like wanting it to happen. So I don't know. If it is that, then did something else happen? Like, is that how they wrap up the Kang storyline? That Kang gets in there and messes up the TVA after all this or something? And then Doom is like, okay, now it's happening. And then, maybe kills Kang or whatever or something.
I mean,
like what else
that
could
would
have
make sense though, to your point. That's a good point, because like the TVA's job right now is hunting down variants of Kang.
Maybe one gets through, breaks this whole thing the TVA is doing. Loki loses the timelines for a second.
Yeah.
Then incursions start happening. So Doom shows up and realizes, like, this is happening regardless. I need Franklin. I need America, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, if there's no, like, ostensibly, there are infinite variants of Kang, right?
Right.
And if they have, for the most part, all managed to break down the multiversal barriers, it would stand to reason. And, we saw the Council of the Kang post-credit scene and whatever happens with that now. Like, I do think it's fair to assume that there are versions of Kang that the TVA will not be able to stop. And I think Kang's whole thing in Quantumania was like, and He Who Remains in Loki, like, if you don't stop me, this will happen. Like, they will be traveling, there will be a multiversal war, but there will also be like these incursions because they're all moving between timelines when they shouldn't be. And so I think that, like, even with Loki holding things, I don't think he's preventing that from happening. I think he's just allowing each of those timelines to exist.
But the TVA is still preventing that from happening.
Or trying to. Yeah, by like hunting down Kang variants. But I just have to think
either that or the incursions are explained more as just naturally happening. Like, has nothing to do with what Loki's holding. They just eventually happen.
Yeah, which would be
that
disappointing because they kind of set up rules that, I
like
would
in
like to
Multiverse
see.
of Madness. And it should be known that Waldron's coming back to like kind of guide that. So it would be kind of weird if he went against his own.
Yeah.
But that also could play into the Kang thing then too. Like maybe he feels like that could be wrapped up because that was his thing in Loki season 1.
Yeah.
As well.
And that to me, like, that makes sense in that these are the people like the Kangs that kind of tapped into this and created these issues. And, like, I forget how much Loki ever did with this, but we talked about this way back when Quantumania first came out. But, like, there is always that tie between Kang and Reed and Doom. Like, really early on, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby they raised this question of whether Kang was actually like a
relative, right?
Yeah, like a distant descendant of Doom. And then you find out like he's actually like a Richards, and so then it's like he's a distant descendant of Reed, and there are like various wrinkles to that across the like the series. But because of that, does that make it not so random? Like if Doom shows up, is it not just like Doom? Like it's not like just a coincidence that it happens to be Kang that is doing all this stuff. Could it actually be something where like there is a real tie between Doom and or Reed that leads one of them, maybe Doom, you know, because Doom and Kang also have like a rivalry in the comics. And so like, does that make sense where it tees it up that way? Like Doom is supposed to, at times, he's been like a time traveler also in the comics. Like really early on was one of the first characters that Marvel ever had invent a time machine. So there are these ways where you could see it not feeling like this like out of left field Kang thing. But I am just like, I'm so fascinated to see what Doom's motivation is. And
yeah, or he just a more evil version.
Yeah, no, which is
or
also
maybe
like
he does
totally
walk in the
fair.
TVA and kill everybody just because he wants that.
Yeah.
Or maybe he sees this vision, or he's time traveled and he sees a vision where he can be the ruler of this one remaining planet. But, you know, like
galaxy, like a battle world.
But the only way to get there is through these incursions. So he's going to set them in motion. So it's possible they just go that he's just more evil.
Yeah.
That's possible. And he knows like, hey, if I've seen the future, if I get Franklin and I get America, theoretically or whatever,
right,
I can pull this all off and it'll be worth it because it will end with the universes that I want and I'm the ruler.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it could be that he's just more evil too.
Well, I mean, and you know, again, yeah, if that's true. And if it's some blend of the two, I do think it would make sense. Like if Doom believes that the multiverse being open is itself the catastrophe, because, you know, you can't have incursions if you don't have a multiverse. And he's viewing what the TVA is now doing as allowing that. Like just the fact that like if incursions are caused by people going into random universes that they don't belong in, you could see a world where he just thinks that the entire TVA needs to cease to exist because it is contributing to the problem. Like it was previously helping to solve the problem, but now it's like they're not trying to like the problem being that all of these universes get to exist. And that's, you know, like that would make sense to me. Like if he's just like there shouldn't be a way for people to open these doors.
Okay, let's close out the episode with any final thoughts on the actual film now. Back to, I love what we just did, but back to the actual movie. It just really makes me think, all this conversation we just had, it makes me think like, it's so genius. I'm so grateful for this movie because it was so standalone. And yet, with how much you're talking about Kang and Doctor Doom and Reed, you really need an established Fantastic Four film before any of this can happen.
Yeah.
And I guess I didn't realize how tied those were going to be.
Yeah.
Now it makes more sense. Like now they have the rights to Fantastic Four. They probably saw that as, okay, now it's our vehicle to make this and then and then that. But it's one of these situations again where like, yeah, it was totally separate, but just because you need that established, it's still connected in that we know they're going to be players and all of that. So it really feels like the perfect balance there.
Yeah. And I also think that it's the perfect multiverse saga film. Like you and I talked about this for a second on the ride back from the theater. Like this to me is like, if you're going to kind of open it up, right? Like we had the MCU that was so cabined, and then now it's like we know that there were all these multiple universes. Like this is such a cool way to do it. Like here's just like a self-contained, like another universe for you to kind of get lost in and get acquainted with. And now it's at a point where whatever happens in Doomsday and Secret Wars, if this universe does disappear, it's going to make me sad. Like I'm invested in it enough, you know, like I'm not like invested in it in the way that I am like 25 films into the 616, but I am invested. And that's important, I think, because they're probably going to want us to feel the stakes for this, for like the X-Men universe with the original cast, with like, if we get something from like the Raimi universe or whatever, like, and so I like that they are, they've done those things too. Like, Deadpool and Wolverine did some of that. No Way Home obviously did some of that. But like, I just think this is like they've been trying, there all these conversations since the multiverse saga started about like, how do you balance like an ongoing story without making it feel too bloated or confusing, and so people can kind of drop in. And I think this is such a masterclass. And, it's coming late in the game as we're kind of starting to near the end of the multiverse saga. But maybe. But,
well, the saga, yes, but
it's interesting that it's like you can have a movie that is in no way connected to the MCU proper, but it feels like, because it feels so classic, and it, all the things we already talked about, like it somehow makes it feel the most appropriate for what they've been. Like, it feels like they finally figured out what they wanted out of this, and what they can do with it. And I don't know what that means and where we go from there, and all the multiverse saga stuff. Like, is there going to be any level of this in like Brand New Day? It sounds like not much, which I think we would both prefer. But I just think it was like, I could not be happier with the movie, because it understood the assignment so well. It exceeded all my expectations, like qualitatively, but it also was just like, man, like, here's the way I look at it. Like, remember the feeling you had after like the Loki season 1 finale, not even getting into season 2, which is incredible, but like this feeling of like, oh my gosh, something seismic has shifted in the MCU. And then just because of the release schedule, we didn't even get any multiverse follow-up at all until No Way Home, and then Multiverse of Madness, but none of it like seemed to necessarily like move things forward. It just kind of felt like, okay, and like, now this is what that means, and here's a corner of it with Spider-Man, and those are like, No Way Home is obviously great. I like Multiverse of Madness a lot too. But this, I think, is kind of what I was expecting, where it's like, okay, now look, like the multiverse is open. What does that mean? And so to see it so like beautifully rendered and to be actually invested in it is a testament to how well like the filmmakers here, like on every level, like pulled off their various tasks. But it also makes me genuinely excited to see what else we might get between now and the end of Secret Wars. Like, if they can do this in such a like solid, like all the way through solid way.
Totally. I loved it. I totally agree. Okay. So we're not going away. If you're listening to this episode the weekend that this film came out, we are at Comic-Con right now in San Diego, just hopefully loving life and enjoying life. But we will have content for you from like on the social media front at the FFW podcast everywhere. We'll be posting stuff about this movie, about that trip, etc. But then also some really fun follow-up episodes, I think. Definitely a few more episodes on this, maybe chatting with some people from this film, and then wrapping up and reflecting on this movie. Has our feelings changed at all, having watched it a second time? And then wrapping up Comic-Con, kind of all that stuff. So now's a great time to subscribe to this podcast, stay in the loop with us, like follow us on social media, and we'll be talking about all this stuff. And then the last thing I'll say is, if you want even more of this discussion in between the episodes, we have a Discord channel that's got, 300, 400, 500 people on it that are just great Marvel fans. It's a great community.
Especially when these, like, around releases.
Right, where you can just kind of chime in with your thoughts, hear other people's theories. Maybe our listeners have a totally different take on that Thunderbolts post-credit sequence. And what happened there. So if you go to our website, the ffwpodcast.com, and you click on the top, I think click on engage, you can find our Discord channel there. There's a link there. And you can find all the appropriate channels and things to talk about. Nothing will be spoiled. easy, fun place to navigate and easy community to be around. But yeah, subscribe to this podcast. Thank you very much for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time right back here on Friends from Work.